All right, I think we can start now. So, hey everyone, welcome to our third speaker event with Mr. Ganes Kesari. My name is Anuj, and I'm an outreach captain at FTC Robotics Team 5773 in Metal. So before we begin, we'd like to introduce our speaker and basically explain how this event will work. So Mr. Kesari is the chief decision scientist and co-founder of Gramener, a startup worth millions which uses data analytics and storytelling to guide business decisions. He helps Gramener clients build a data science strategy and data-oriented culture, and he experiments with machine learning and data-driven storytelling to devise business insights. Thank you so much for coming today, Mr. Kesari. Oh yeah, Rishi, can you unmute him?
Oh yeah, thank you, Anuj. Yeah, and I promise the participants that's the most jargon you will hear. The rest of the presentation is going to be very, very simple words.
Yeah. So with that being said, let's begin.
So the way that this event will work is that we'll begin with a 20 to 30-minute presentation from Mr. Kesari on his work and career tips. And then after that, we'll use the remaining time for an audience Q&A. Mr. Kesari, would you like to begin?
Sure. You'll have to enable screen sharing for me. It says disabled.
Okay, it was just enabled.
Yep, I can do that. Let me bring up my presentation. All right, you can see the screen?
Yeah.
Yep, cool. All right, so here we go. Excited to be talking to all of you. So while we get started, would like to understand the mix of audience here. So we're going to be using a lot of the chat window. So I'm looking for reactions, responses. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. So can you type to the chat window how many of you are in, say, high school, middle school? You can just say high or middle, or others can just say others. Just trying to get an understanding of the mix. It'll take a few seconds. Just going on to the chat. All right. So far, it's a good mix. Slightly more high school students. All right. I think looks like majority is high school, and then rest. Yeah. Cool. So this presentation, I've tried to keep it simple enough so that the entire set of audience we have here today can fully understand and appreciate, though the technology is a little complex. I've tried to simplify. I'd like to hear from all of you at the end how easy it was to understand. So when I say artificial intelligence, AI, what comes to mind first? Again, you can use the chat window. The first thing that comes to mind. I'll prompt with robots. Is it something else? What comes to mind? Okay, robots and okay, Preet says robots and other autonomous parts. What else? Looking for a few more reactions. Can you think of any products, or could be even from the movies, any products or names that come to mind? Smart assistants, Meena says machine learning, predictions, complex mind, robots. Elon Musk, okay, that's a good one, Aditi. Alexa, Google Chrome. Okay, wonderful. I'm surprised not many people are giving names from Star Wars or say even from Terminator. I don't know if all of you like or are familiar with Terminator, but Siri, Sophia, the robot. Yeah, that's great. So when we mention AI, robots come to mind, and immediately a lot of people, at least adults, I've heard this often, they think of these killer robots from Terminator. And at the other end, people immediately recall C-3PO from Star Wars. While these two are extremes and we haven't gotten there yet, thankfully, in a way, today we are with these kind of products. Elon Musk, Tesla, synonymous with AI and self-driving cars. The vacuum cleaners you see at home. And some of these small devices, I think it's B8, and all of these which you see around, which can program, which do a little bit of small, narrow tasks today. That's what AI equates to in terms of practical applications and products around us today. So in this presentation, we will go a little more deeper under the hood and try to understand what really the concept is. Why is it so popular? And I will talk through 3 interesting stories on how AI is doing some good in the world. So another poll for you. So this one, if you can, if you're able to navigate, it's an online poll. You can see the screen, the answers here. If you can go to meet.ps/AIU, you will be able to vote for this poll. I think this will be a little easier to collect the live polls. And once you answer, just stay in that window. There are 2 more polls. In case you're not able to access this, I can respond to in the chat, but I would prefer if all of you respond. If not, that is okay. Yeah, I see some responses coming in. The answers, okay, some people have no idea. Okay, 0% have no idea. Others, I think mostly have heard about it, have taken classes. Okay, that's interesting. About 20% have coded some solutions in machine learning or related to that. Okay, it's mostly heard about it. Close to 50% heard about it. Okay, most of you have voted, so that's good. So we don't have anyone in the first bucket. That's great. So let's move on. A quick introduction about me, as promised, without jargons, and a little bit more trivia and what I'm passionate about. And then we will dive into the rest of the content. I am co-founder and I lead advisory and decision science at Gramener, a 10-year-old organization, serve about 100 clients and 230 people globally serving the clients. I am passionate about simplifying data science for everyone. So in talks like this, I speak and write targeting a variety of audience, primarily to simplify AI, data science, and analytics and put it to good use. And I write for magazines like Entrepreneur, Forbes, TechCrunch. Trivia about me: I have backpacked solo in the Himalayas for 2 weeks, and I build habits by collecting time logs and using data to manage my time. I do it a little methodically, and I love board games. So with my 2 kids, we spend a lot of time playing board games. So here are the 4 things we'll be talking about today. Number 1, what's driving the AI craze? A quick introduction to AI and what is different now in the last couple of years. Why are we hearing so much about it? Number 2, what AI can do today. Some examples. And third, we'll get into the stories, AI and social good. And finally, AI and careers and what you should be aware of in the future and how you can prepare yourselves. That's the plan for today. Getting into the first section, what's driving the AI craze? Another quick poll. Let me launch the second one. Okay, interesting question. When do you think AI was first developed? Was it in the last 10 years, 10 to 25, 25 to 50, or even earlier than that? Has it been around for centuries? Okay, again, interesting mix, mostly options 2 and 3. Option 2 seems to be popular again. Okay, almost no one says, okay, a couple of people are saying last 10 years, maybe one or 2 people are saying last 10 years. Some people are saying even earlier. Okay, a couple of more seconds. Okay, last 25 to 50 years seems to be popular. All right, so we'll close the poll now. So popular answer, last 25 to 50 years, and absolutely right. AI has been around for close to 50 years. I think you should give yourselves a pat on the back because a lot of adults, a lot of people working in technology also think that AI has been around and it's been a very recent phenomenon. That's not true. AI has been around for a long, long time. and I say that it might as well share its diamond jubilee with the queen, or it's as old as your granddad. So if AI has been around for so long, why are people crazy about it right now? So when you say history of AI, so 1950 onwards, 1950s were the first time AI as a concept came into being. A lot of foundational work happened back then. And understandably, in the next 20 years, there was a lot of hype around AI. People started investing a lot of money, and companies started expecting a lot more from it, which AI couldn't fulfill. So that led to a downfall, a drop in interest, which is called as the AI winter. And after about 10 years, again, there was a resurgence of interest. New hopes, again, the bubble burst. So it fell again, 1990s. And after 1990s, people really did not want to talk about AI. They've been hurt twice, and they thought there's no potential in this technology. So for a couple of decades, 1990s and 2000, there was not much of buzz around AI. But 2010 onwards, there's been explosive growth in AI. Some fundamentals have changed in the last 10 years. Question for you, what do you think has really changed that is making AI do a comeback again? You can use the chat window. What are some trends, some big trends that you think is causing this interest around AI? Okay, Miraya says perhaps there are more people beginning to work on it. Hardware is making it more possible. Yeah, hardware, Maithili. That's a good answer. Computer processing power, Devesh, great answer. What else? Just think of the new things that you're using, whether it is gadgets or things around you, and why there could be demand for AI. Automated tasks are now more in demand, Walid says. Yeah, that's true. There is expectation for automation, and there are businesses pumping in money. Machine learning is helping. Yeah, that's right. So there is something about machine learning which has really made things more useful. We'll talk more about it. Okay, those are good answers. What's changed today? There are 5 key trends which are really redefining the picture today. Number one, we have more data. AI needs data to work. What do we mean by data? Any number, any picture, video, all of these are types of data. And today we don't have any paucity of this kind of data with social media, internet, and there's all kinds of data being generated every second. So all of this is fuel for AI, which was not the case in the 1950s or 60s. That's one major trend. Number two, storage. Someone mentioned it's very easy and very cheap to store large amounts of data. Again, when I said AI needs data, it needs huge amounts of data, and you should be able to store it. Only then you can feed it to the AI. Third thing, processing power. This again, someone mentioned. Once you collect and store the data, you need to do something about it. So that's where the processing power, chips come into play. Again, chips have become very, very inexpensive. What you have in your mobile phone is equivalent to the power of a supercomputer a few decades back. I'm sure all of you would have heard of that. So that is the power of processors today. Number four, software programs. When you talk about machine learning, there are some fundamental things happening around programming which have made it easier to code and create those AI solutions. Number five, the internet. You need connectivity, and connectivity makes it easy to transfer, collect, and run the AI. So internet has made it very easy. All of these five, if you look at a few decades back, they weren't as easy or as freely available. So this is really the pivot point for AI to become really popular again. And this time, experts say that the fundamentals are very different. So they say that it's very, very likely that the demand will continue and the chances of another AI winter are unlikely. That's what experts say. So now let's talk about definitions. What is artificial intelligence? A lot of people have said you've heard about it. So it's a good time to talk about the definition. Again, guesses or what do you think AI is? define it in your own words. You can be wrong, that's fine. Just give it a shot. What do you think AI is? Okay. Anuj says using data to make predictions. Great answer. We have data, and with the data, we're trying to see into the future and make predictions. What else? Can someone go a few steps back and then talk about something at a much higher abstracted level? Okay. Statistics to model learning. Okay. That's a good answer too, Sahith. Can you compare AI and humans and come up with some answer? Intelligence, artificial intelligence. Okay, Munesh, a system designed to act human and perhaps even be self-conscious. Great answer. To do actions like humans and perhaps eventually become self-conscious as well. Self-conscious is a nice to have, or rather some people say it's not a very nice thing to have, but definitely acting like humans and being able to make decisions, that qualifies as AI. Learning how to do something based on input and output, Siddharth says. Great answers. AI, the definition, we'll look at it, and let's also talk about machine learning. So firstly, the definition of AI, ability of a computer to perform tasks commonly associated with humans. This is a very simple definition. Things like seeing, hearing, doing, and being able to do a variety of actions. If machines can do it, we can call that as AI. That's a very, very simple definition. Now, machine learning is a subset of AI, as you see in this diagram. What do you think is the definition of machine learning? Some of you mentioned using data to make predictions. I'll go with some of those answers. I think that is a good overlap. Basically, it is the use of programs that help machines to learn and adapt without explicit instructions. The key difference here is the ability to learn without having to code every single logic. So that's where we talk about the two differences. One is programs or computer programs. I'm sure those who are taking coding classes, most of you would have been exposed to some form of coding at some point. So programs that solve the problem, that's traditional coding. Can you give an example of programs that solve the problem which don't have machine learning? Any quick examples? Something which is not machine learning. Calculators. Yeah, that's a great answer. Calculators, when you want to do a square root or any of those other standard functions, calculators have logic, and any number you feed in, they are able to do that same thing again and again. Yeah, a phone. Yeah, good answers there. So here I've given an example of sorting algorithm. So when you have a stream of numbers, this algorithm goes through the numbers and sorts it ascending or descending. That's an example of a program. Whether you run it the first time or the millionth time, it does the same thing in the same way, efficient, but it does the same thing over and over again. It doesn't have any new learning. What about examples of programs that learn to solve the problem? Can you give examples? So programs that learn, in case you've done it, or even otherwise, things that you've seen, programs that use machine learning, chess robots, trash sorter. Yeah, great answers. So these are machines or robots that need to learn, and they need to get better over time. So that way, these are programs that learn to solve the problem. It fits into machine learning. Quick example, when you feed in images of cats, the machine learns all of these, the features of a cat. And then when you share a new picture, it can identify that it is a cat, and it can go a step further and say, okay, this is cat number 1, 2, and 3. It can go and identify individual animals as well. That capability exists today. This is an example of programs that learn to solve the problem, machine learning. So AI, when you look at how it learns, it's not very different from how we humans learn. So when you teach a toddler, when you show some flashcards and you say, this is an elephant and this is a rhino, you share pictures and you keep repeating it over and over again. And when you repeat it, say a few times, the next time the baby sees an elephant as a toy on the billboard or in the forest, could be a completely different kind of an animal, but still an elephant, the baby is able to identify instantly. That is the power of the human brain. And AI tries to mimic and learns the same way. They call it neural networks. That's the most popular technology powering AI today. That's one of the technologies, but that's the most popular one that is designed just like the human brain. So that's a quick primer about AI and what's really driving the craze. Let's get into the second part. What can AI do today? Some examples. Okay, time for poll again. When you think of AI, what's your first emotion? Excitement? You're scared? Or you really don't care? I hope I covered the prominent emotions, otherwise you can choose the one closest. A lot of people are excited, okay, understandably. That's why you're here in the session. That's great. A few people scared. We'll give a couple of more seconds. Okay, I get it. Most of you are excited about it. I'll check again at the end of this section whether you're still excited. I'm going to share some nice and not so nice examples. Firstly, opportunities. So AI is getting very creative. Earlier, people used to say that AI will automate the lower end jobs, typical automation defense, right? They say that humans can do the higher end tasks. But AI today is doing all kinds of jobs. And there's a recent book called Future Proof by a New York Times journalist. He says that there's no job that can't be taken over by AI. For example, it can write stuff, creative writing. And there's a recent algorithm from a company called OpenAI. It's called GPT-3. Like people went crazy about this because it was able to write a lot of creative stuff and do a lot of creative tasks. So which of these do you think is real? AI can also generate pictures, generate a lot of objects. And these 4 pictures, you can type it into the chat window. Which of these 4 is the real person? Others are AI generated. Okay, let me look at reactions. A lot of votes for 2. Okay, 1 for 2 seems to be popular. I think 1 or 2 votes for 1 and 3, but 2 is going strong. Okay, 2 wins by majority. Unfortunately, all 4 are AI generated. This was a trick question. So this is from the website, thispersondoesnotexist.com. So all of these are artificially generated. So you can, it's very difficult to tell the fake ones from the real ones. So AI is, actually, there are some positive use cases here. For marketing purposes, you can quickly generate, say, models and with different actions. And it lowers the cost of a lot of companies. Otherwise, they would have to hire professionals and do it. So those are some tasks which can be easily done by AI today. But there are risks. Okay, before I show you, how many of you have seen the Tom Cruise video on TikTok? No? Okay, a few. Okay, Anuj is nodding his head. So I'm sure if you're active on TikTok and this is something which went viral, Tom Cruise video, I've linked to it here. So there were some short snippets uploaded, people, nice videos. But then the real surprise was that when the creator said that they are actually not from Tom Cruise and they had done some face swapping. There's another model who had acted it out and then they had used AI to transfer the features and paste the face effectively on this model. So that actually drew people crazy. Like they couldn't really believe it. They watched it over and over again. There are few instances in the videos where it is not very perfect, but otherwise you can't tell the difference. So this is a risk. It can generate fake news at scale. And AI today, whether it is pictures or even writing full long articles with a lot of incorrect facts, it is possible, and AI can generate this at scale. That is a risk. It's not it's in the early stages, but there's a huge risk in the future. Threats. This is real. AI killer drones have been used in the Libyan conflict. Last month, this was a big news. It was published by United Nations. They say that there's a drone army which was created, and some of the drones have autonomously, without any human input, have hunted down the soldiers of another country. So this is really alarming. And this is something which a lot of experts have been talking about for years. They've been saying that AI needs to be regulated. It has just too much power. You don't leave it free for anyone and everyone to use it. So these are some threats which are already materializing. Hopefully, countries and different experts will come together and there will be some resolutions which will be passed. But so far, it doesn't exist. So all of these threats are very much real. So a range of emotions, right? We looked at opportunities, some really good things AI can do, some risks which can materialize in the future, and some threats, some big issues we should be worried about today. So all these three exist. Now, before you conclude that AI has arrived or AI is really super smart, you should also know that it's not very good. So here's an example. So people typically look at the robots from Boston Dynamics, popular forwards like these. These kind of robots are there in the labs. But in real world, when you put the robots, they are more like what you see on the right-hand side. They can't grasp an object. They can't place it. And they really are very clumsy. They fall down. So, and they can't get back up on their feet. So they're still progressing. And in narrow areas, narrow scenarios, AI is really good. But when you expect it to have some understanding or even common sense, it falls flat. For example, a few more cases. So what you see here, we can easily tell that this is a fox squirrel, but AI says it's a sea lion with 99% certainty. A dragonfly, it thinks it's a manhole cover. The kind of pattern, textures, and how it was trained on. So all of that influences it. And it's very easy to trick it consciously as well. You see this image of a pig, it says it's a pig, but when you inject some noise into the same picture, to the human eye, you don't see a difference. But when the computer processes the pixels, it says it's an airliner. It's no longer a pig for the AI. So it's very easy to trick it, in which case self-driving cars, if you inject something into the stop sign and make it speed past, that's a risk. So that way AI is as good as the humans behind it. So which is where my favorite quote for AI is, before you work on AI, we'll have to do something about natural stupidity. And we also have to be worried about the humans behind the AI, because AI is ultimately a tool. It can be used for good purposes and for bad purposes. The power is enormous. You just need to be careful in terms of who you give the control to and what kind of applications they put to use. So unless you have that kind of a regulation control, it can get dangerous. Let's now talk about areas where it can really transform the world and save lives. I hope to keep all of you excited. I think more than 80% of you are excited, and I actually hope to convince the people who are scared also that yes, AI is something that you should be interested in and perhaps even build a career on. So AI and social good. What do you, there's something about this picture. Any guesses? What is unusual about this picture? Okay. Yeah, Sahit, great answer. They're all extinct. Okay, Preet says it's all fake. Unfortunately, this is not generated by AI. So all of these are real animals which existed in the world, but they have become extinct. So great species which we have lost. In the book Sapiens, author Yuval Harari says humans are ecological serial killers. So we say, so he says that we humans over thousands of years, we have wiped out hundreds of thousands of animal species, even with Stone Age tools. So that's something to be concerned about, because we haven't paid as much attention to the environment, to the biodiversity around us. And that we, at least now, we'll have to pay attention to, because a lot of animals we see today, in 5 to 10 years, we might lose them as well. First story is that of a rhino called Sudan. He lived in Africa. He was one of the last 3 northern white rhinos in existence in this world. A couple of years back, he died. And before he died, he was protected 24/7 by soldiers. And eventually he died of old age, leaving behind just 2 northern white rhinos, both of whom are female, which means effectively we lost another species. When these other 2 rhinos died, there's no way to revive them. So when this news came about, there was a lot of attention. People tweeted about it, but then they moved on. And very soon, the killing continued. Every 9 hours, a rhino is killed somewhere. And there's a sad picture of a baby and the mom rhino being killed. So this is heartbreaking. In spite of species steadily going into decline, there are people who continue to kill them for whatever monetary purposes. So a lot of environmentalists have been working on solutions to safeguard these rhinos. You have these huge the parks where they have the rangers, but they have across thousands of miles. It's very difficult to protect these animals. So that's where they started looking at AI as a potential component of the solution. Can we use AI and other emerging technology to protect these endangered species? They looked at drones. So drones can capture aerial pictures, and maybe you can process and do something quickly about it. But then aerial pictures are like this. How many animals do you think are here in this picture? You can just type into the chat. Quick quiz for you. If at all you're able to see the animals, there are some animals in this picture. Okay, 8, 7, 12, 4. Okay, most of you are close. 8, 9. Okay. This is what the AI says when it's trained on these to detect these animals. Just show the picture, it just detects it. So here's how rhinos are being saved today. Drones are equipped with night vision, and they are powered by AI. Once they are released, they can be monitored from these mobile vans and pretty much from anywhere. And these drones keep circling the sky, and they monitor for any unusual movements. When they see signs of poaching, some human movements, they immediately report that location. Firstly, they qualify it, and then they report the locations back to the control center. They then validate it and send rangers. And these rangers can get to the spot even before the poachers can reach, or they can get close to the rhinos. This has been extremely effective in a place which had over 20 rhinos killed every month. After this pilot was implemented, there were 0 deaths 6 months in a row. This was how effective such a technology-driven AI solution can be. This otherwise wouldn't have been possible just with the same tools we had earlier. That's story number 1. Number 2, all of you like penguins. What movies come to mind? Okay, Happy Feet, I see. Okay, Madagascar, Happy Feet. Yeah, they're lovely. Unfortunately, penguin populations have been declining. A lot of places, Antarctica and many other places, have been losing them at an alarming rate. Global warming and all of these are taking a toll. So the Oxford University set up 100 cameras across 16 locations, and it started capturing time-lapse pictures. And with close to 10 years of data, they had collected all of it, but they were not able to process it, given that they were about 100,000 pictures or so. What they wanted to establish was statistically prove that the penguin populations have declined over these 10 years. For that, you'll need to count the penguins, and you have to count penguins across hundreds of thousands of pictures. That is where a couple of years back, they turned to AI for the solution. They processed all of these pictures. They took a subset of it to train the AI. The dots you see here are ways that you can identify and say that, hey, here's a penguin. just look at it and learn from it. So when you share thousands of pictures like these to the AI, it starts learning and detecting what penguins look like in different poses and different lighting conditions. So it starts learning what penguins look like. And then when you give it a picture, it can start counting within the picture from crowds of penguins. Now we are taking a couple of leaps. One is not just detecting penguins, but being able to count the penguins. And counting is a very tough problem. What you see on the left-hand side, if you look at crowds of people, you can't count individually. You don't see all those heads. And crowds, naturally, you have some groupings where more people are there. And those who are closer to the camera look bigger. So the solution here is to use a density-based counting method. What you see below, these are clusters that the AI identifies, and it says these portions, which are, say, red, are likely to have, say, thousands of hundreds of people, whereas those in blue are likely to have tens of people. The ones which are even darker will have even lesser. So it's able to identify those estimates, put all the numbers together, and come up with a total. Imagine counting the number of people in a stadium just with a single picture like this. That's what AI has been able to do. This is a solution we have trained at Gramener with 53 penguins that you see the actual count. The AI got a close estimate 49 with a similar approach. With this approach, all of the pictures of penguins were passed, and AI has been able to come up with estimates, which is an important step in passing some regulations and making some controls so that this decline in penguins can be arrested. So this is another great solution which can help us save these animals. Story 3. This is about saving human lives. Question for you. What is the most dangerous animal in the world? Use the chat again. Okay, Anuj says humans. Okay, given what you've seen in the last 2 years, humans definitely qualify. What else? Okay, Maithili, mosquitoes. Okay, that's good. Bees, lions. Okay, you've got the answer right. While a lot of us might talk about snakes, even dogs, rabies, and so on, diseases, humans stand all above them. And even more than humans, mosquitoes. Maithili, you're right. So mosquitoes take a huge toll. They are known to kill almost 1 million people every year, if you can qualify them as animals. So this is, again, very difficult to control, particularly in tropical countries. Here's a real story of a lady called Dilika from Sri Lanka. Her 10-year-old son contracted dengue. He was hospitalized. He was saved eventually, but her neighbor's son didn't have this fate. So the neighbor's son died. So similarly, there have been a lot of people suffering from outbreaks of dengue, chikungunya, and all of these deadly diseases like yellow fever. So World Mosquito Program has come up with an innovation to modify these mosquitoes. They create what you call good mosquitoes to fight the bad mosquitoes. They inject naturally occurring bacteria into the eggs of mosquitoes. So they're called the modified mosquitoes or the good mosquitoes. And when they are released into the environment, when they mate with the other normal mosquitoes in the wild, their babies also lose the ability to carry these diseases. By the way, the blue mosquitoes, the good mosquitoes, don't have an ability to carry these diseases like dengue. So when they mate and reproduce, all of the mosquitoes, like their babies, are also not able to carry these diseases. So what you need to really do is, when you have this wild mosquito population, you slowly start injecting or releasing these modified good mosquitoes into the environment. As they start spreading and replicating, eventually all the mosquitoes will become, say, the blue ones. None of them will be able to carry these deadly diseases. This is something which they've been testing, and they've run multiple pilots for the last 10 years. It's proven to be extremely effective. And they have rolled out this pilot in Sri Lanka as well. But the question was, all of this is good, but it is very expensive to inject these bacteria into the eggs and create those good mosquitoes. And you can't create hundreds of thousands of mosquitoes like that. That's the limitation. So if you have few hundreds or few thousands of mosquitoes, how do you release them in strategic spots so that they multiply and spread very quickly? If you release them in places where there aren't mosquitoes, you're going to effectively lose a batch. So it's a very strategic decision. You have to release at the right spots. That's where AI comes in. AI looks at a map like this, and it says, these are the spots where you're likely to have most humans, like high population of humans. And the mosquito population is very closely related to where humans live. So if you can identify the human population of each of these localities, then you can release mosquitoes in those spots. And there's a lot of math behind it in terms of which spots to pick. All of that is done by the AI. What you see on the right-hand side is an actual output produced by the AI by taking this left-hand side thing. And you can see the stadium here. It colors it as orange, which means it says there's no population, like no human settlement there. The green ones are low population, blue ones are heavy population. That way, it is able to identify all of those clusters. This is aerial footage. By looking at the quality of buildings, by looking at all of those, the characteristics of the areas around the map, it's able to detect. It has been trained to count the number of people approximately in a locality. With that, it's able to come up with a plan to release the mosquitoes. Then you just have those volunteers go in and release those mosquitoes. They call it mossy boxes with the eggs. They leave them in these spots, and eventually the eggs hatch and the mosquitoes start spreading. So with this intervention, Sri Lanka, they've been able to control. This was a pilot which was done last year. So early stages, great results. But there are other countries like Queensland, like Australia. In Queensland, they have pretty much controlled dengue. That's been observed over the last 10 years. So it's moved way beyond those pilots. So that's the third story. And this is again a project we have done, and we won some AI for Good awards for some of these projects. More details about these available in these links. So that's the third section. Now we'll wrap up with a final one, and then we'll open for questions. AI and you. So how many of you are excited to make a career in AI? Do you want to work in AI? So this you can reply the chat, yes or no, or not sure. I see a lot more yeses, one not sure. Okay, perhaps. All right. So in case you're wondering whether you need to learn a lot of coding to work in AI, good news is you don't have to. It's not only programmers who can make a career in AI. So you can conceive AI solutions. So in terms of coming up with a business problem or an organizational problem, like in this case, we said deaths due to mosquito-borne diseases. Coming up with an approach saying, this is the solution, this is how we have to do it, and AI can help in these spots. So coming up with that overall workflow approach and identifying that solution and leading the project is one of those roles which you can get into. It doesn't need any coding, it just needs familiarity with this. So if you are interested in leading these initiatives and eventually getting into a career where you can work in it and create a big difference, that could be one role for you. Number two, if you're interested in sketching, designing, that's very much a part of the AI solutions. The front end of AI solutions needs great designers. Again, you don't need coding for this role. If you have a passion for designing and improving the experience of users, that's something which you can pursue. Number three, obviously, coding. If you are interested, there are roles like data scientist where you can learn coding, build machine learning algorithms. That's one of the career paths. And apart from that, a lot more, many more, which we don't even know about today. Roles like data scientist, even 10 years back, it didn't exist. And 10 years from now or 20 years from now, when all of you start working, there will be completely new roles which will come about. For example, there was a recent study which looked at 100 jobs of the future. There were crazy titles and crazy roles. For instance, environmentalist who controls the weather by playing with the different aspects of the planet's things which control the climate and playing with the weather, or bringing back extinct animals. So some of those using AI-driven technologies. So some of those could be completely new roles we can't even imagine today. So a lot more is evolving. So just the key takeaway here is that you don't need to code to get into AI. There are a lot of other exciting roles you can get into. In case you're not interested in a role in AI, that's still fine. What I would recommend, two things for you. One, whether you like it or not, AI is going to be around us and we're going to be users of AI. So you need to be curious about what AI can do for you. It's already in your mobile phone. Most of the applications use AI, Google Photos, all of these use AI. So you need to be aware of where AI is used, how it's collecting your data, and what kind of an impact it can have on you. And also the benefits, because if you know that it has a learning element embedded, you can take advantage of it. Second, watch out for the risks. I talked about lack of regulation in AI space today. So this is a big concern. And in fact, this is something which I advise all the adults to do as well, that watch out for the risks. And we need to shape the discourse and talk and bring up those issues and bring new rules so that AI is not misused. So that's another role that all of you as users, you will have to speak up and ask for. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. Like I mentioned, AI is a new electricity. It's a new technology which is really going mainstream today compared to 50 years back. But very soon, it will be a part of anything and everything. So it's time to embrace and see how we can make the most of it. Okay, thank you. This presentation is available at this link, and perhaps Maithili, Anuj, you can share it with the participants as well.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that great presentation. It was really, you covered a lot of stuff, and I think you made it very accessible to all of us as well. Thank you so much. And we'll have a Q&A section now. So during the Q&A, you'll be able to submit and upvote questions on an online Q&A software called Mentimeter. And so the link will be placed in the description. The link is in the chat right now. And our team is going to select questions from both the audience and based on our own research, and we'll just read them off as they come on that platform. So to start off, what inspired you to get involved in AI and machine learning, and how did that eventually lead to your place at Gramener?
I've always been interested in using technology to solve problems in the world. The first 10 years of my career, been using programming and regular technologies to solve it. About 2011, when we saw data and the rise of power of data. So at that time, a lot of people were still using analytics, but it was not fully properly applied in different scenarios. So we saw the gap in businesses where the decisions were disconnected from the data. They were making decisions, but they were not using the data. That propelled us to start Gramener. We co-founded the company with two things in mind. One was to bring in storytelling, data visualization storytelling to simplify the decisions. Number two, to bring in AI analytics to strengthen what you can find from the data and then present it in the form of stories. That was the motivation.
That's very interesting. And then you gave several examples in your talk of AI preventing harm to biodiversity. Is it possible that AI poses a threat to biodiversity as well?
The poachers have been using automatic rifles and all of these, the latest weaponry. So it's not far away where they use drones to hunt down the animals as well, AI-driven drones to hunt down the animals. So it's like a knife. AI is like a knife. It can be used for good purposes and for bad purposes. So the threat very much exists. That's where the regulation and control has to be there. And we should be worried about the humans behind the AI. AI is it's not a concern as such.
So I guess AI can be used, it's like two sides of the same coin.
That's right.
Someone from the audience asked, how do you gather your training data? And how do you gather your training data?
Yeah, that's a great question. AI needs lots of data to be trained. In this case of penguins, I shared how Oxford University put up all of those cameras and collected it for 10 years. Today, a challenge is getting good quality data to train AI. often you have to collect your own data. When we look at businesses, when you talk about within companies, they collect the data and they need to streamline the processes to collect, whether it is talking to customers and getting feedback from them, they need to start collecting it. In other cases, they have to set up, say, sensors or other digital channels where they can do it. So that is needed. And number two, there is a lot of public data available as well. People, when it comes to those AI which can write text, they have been using the freely available text like Wikipedia and all of those public documents which are easily available. So wherever possible, people use public data. And beyond that, they combine it with private data they collect and painstakingly clean it up. So both of those are sources.
Okay. And then going back to Gramener, Gramener uses AI a lot for business and data-driven decisions. So what impact do you foresee that AI can have on business just worldwide?
Today, AI is no longer a differentiator. It's kind of a must-have. Any organization which doesn't use data or analytics for decision clearly won't be able to survive. So organizations, there were recent surveys. There was one survey which said almost the large organizations, 99% of them have invested in big data and AI. So already companies are investing. The real challenge we are seeing is in terms of getting the full value from AI. You invest in AI, but are you really getting the bang for your buck? So that is where companies like Gramener come in and guide organizations in terms of picking the right places, projects to apply AI, and also how to build solutions which really give the benefits. So application of AI in the right way and getting the benefits is a challenge. It's almost a given, every business is using it.
And okay, sorry. What do you think are the extents of AI, both ethically and computationally?
Sorry, can you say that again? Limitations?
I think this was an audience question. They asked, what do you think are the extents of AI ethically and computationally?
Okay, ethically.
Limitations.
Yeah. So talking about ethical aspects, so that's a major thing, because we talked about fake news. That's one use case there where people have been using it for personal motives and to create all kinds of problems. That can be controlled only when you have the right ethical controls for use of AI. Again, no regulations exist. It is a severe concern today. Number one, from computational perspective, AI, it's very expensive to really scale the AI models. You can get started, but if you really want to use it for big scale applications, it is expensive because you need access to heavy computing power beyond what you generally need for simple detection. So when you really have to scale it, that becomes a limitation. Organizations which can really put in the millions of dollars into it will be able to get a huge competitive advantage compared to other smaller organizations or startups. So that divide is also emerging with the use of AI. That's something to watch out for.
Okay, and you gave some unique advice at the end of your presentation about what we could do and what the career paths look like. And our audience was wondering, what was one thing you wish you knew when you became interested and involved in the field of AI?
Okay, that's interesting. I'm just trying to see from your perspective for this audience, what will be a useful thing to know. I would say the biggest benefit would have been in terms of simplifying the communications. Right? Once you apply AI, the results, if you can communicate in a very simple manner to the users, they will be able to adopt it quickly. The first couple of years we struggled, we burnt our fingers and made some mistakes. You can build great predictive algorithms, but you need to communicate those algorithms in a way that users can use it. Otherwise, the algorithms are not touched by the target users. If you can understand that aspect, not just the technical aspect, but the software communication aspect of the results, that will actually go a long way. That is where the roles I talked about, designer, and some of those other non-technical roles. They are important. And that we took a couple of years to figure out. That would have been good if you had known on day one.
Yeah, well, thank you for that great presentation and Q&A, Mr. Kesari. I'm sure it was as insightful and interesting for me as it was for everyone else. And thank you also to everyone who attended our event. So Mr. Kesari has numerous videos available online where he discusses more about his company and AI, including his own TED Talk. So make check out and the video that we will post on this recorded session on our YouTube channel.
Yep, thanks much, Maithili and team. My pleasure, and looking forward to the interactions. Great questions. Hope all of you are excited about AI and are a little more curious to explore it. Any other questions, do reach out, happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so as we're closing the event, please make sure to fill out our feedback form, which we'll put the link to in the chat. We would really appreciate any feedback that you have for our event, as we always try to improve upon it. And also please make sure to check out our social media on our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, Instagram, and website for more updates on our future speaker events. And those are in the chat now. So yeah, thank you very much for everyone who came, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kesari.